Hey everybody, how you doing? Welcome to the Life, Love, and Existential Dread podcast. My name's Bryan and Nathan. I'm a film composer in Los Angeles. My co-host Nathan Shelton, actor,
Hi.
writer, director, Playboy billionaire in Chicago.
Playboy
how you doing,
model
Nathan?
billionaire.
Playboy model. I'm sorry, Playboy model.
Yeah.
I was going for, at night you dress up as a bat and fight crime and
Oh, totally.
everything. You're doing that right after
Batman.
this, right? So,
Yeah.
yes.
I probably have the angst of Batman, so that works.
Okay. Yeah. All right. We are back again. Lots of things to talk about. Got a few ideas, few things to start us off. And I got something to start off with. This may sound a little weird, but hey, would you let me punch you in the face for $100?
What, for $100? No.
$100?
I mean,
no.
I've never seen you punch anybody. I don't know how good you are at it.
I'm not very good at it. That's part
Then
of
maybe.
it. I say, okay.
Like, is it going to be a love?
No glass.
Are you going to hit me in the nose?
It's going to be
Brian?
like. No.
Okay.
Well, I don't know. I've never hit somebody in the face, so it would be like a whole new thing. Just wanted to see what you say to that. $100, crisp, clean, $100 bill, no glasses, just like now.
Mm.
You would or you wouldn't? I don't know.
I think it depends. I mean, if you ask me this question right now, when I'm waiting on my tax refund to come in, I'm more apt to say yeah. Yeah, okay.
All right.
But if you're asking me once my tax refund comes in, then I'd be like, fuck off. No way. But also the fact that you're all the way across the country in Los Angeles, that makes me go, yeah, okay, I'll say yes to anything.
Okay. All right. Fair answer,
Well, would you let me kick you in the balls for $500?
$500.
$500, but I get to kick you as hard as I want in the testicles. And you can't block or anything. You just have to stand there and take it.
No. Same thing. Yeah, you got to take it. Take the pain. $500. Yeah. Go ahead. I'd let you. Yeah.
$250 per testy. Plus a lifetime of me getting to secretly record that and show it to all your friends.
Right. Yeah. Hey, this is Bryan getting kicked in the balls, but he got paid $500. Took it like a man. Now he's no longer a man because both his balls are crushed.
Right.
So
Both
I don't know.
his balls are gone. He's got implants.
Was it worth $500? I don't know.
I mean, you have to incur any medical
I
bills
would.
that happen afterwards. I'm not paying for that shit. I'm only paying to kick you in the balls. You do it.
Yeah, I think I would.
All right. You don't want to have kids someday, huh?
I am long past that. I am 46 years old. There's no way I'm having a kid at 46. Even later than that, no way.
Though. You could.
I could. I choose not to.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, this will give you the excuse. Well, sorry, baby, I can't. I got kicked in the balls for $500.
Well, it's just a safety thing. I go to a sperm bank and make a donation just in case, before I get kicked in the balls. And
there you go.
They both, yeah, I would do that. Yeah.
Okay.
But in general, I think it's way too late, and I really don't want to anyway. So
to get kicked in the balls or to have kids?
Have kids or kicked in the balls,
it's
but
never
I need
too
the
late
$500. So
right?
Never too late. Yeah, before they start hanging too long and everything, and then you really start injuring yourself, inadvertently. Yeah, it's never too late.
You can kick yourself in the balls by accident.
Yeah, that's just like you sit down and yeah. See.
Oh God, is this what we're going to talk about?
Well, I was just going to say, folks, you never know where this conversation is going to lead. I kind of started it out with the violence, but I recently watched Rocky IV, and that one scene where Ivan Drago he's punching that square thing that measures how hard he's punching.
Okay.
And he says, and then like the Russian trainer or whatever, he's saying, the average boxer punches this amount per square inch, and then Ivan Drago, he punches this thing, and it's like 3-4 times much more than the average boxer, and I was just blown away by how strong he is. And then of course everything unfolds after that. Don't want to spoil it if you haven't seen Rocky 4 yet
I
from
mean, come on. If you
1985.
haven't seen Rocky 4 yet, you're not going to. Like me, I've never seen Rocky 4, and I'm probably not going to.
Oh,
I
you
know.
haven't
You know
seen
what?
Rocky 4?
Dude, I've never seen any Rocky movie all the way through. Not even the first Rocky movie all the way through. Now, I've seen a lot of the
Wow.
first Rocky movie from when I was younger. And, I'm a big movie buff, and I always have been. But for some reason,
Yeah.
boxing movies has never interested me at all. Like most
Really?
sports movies do not interest me. Most sports TV shows do not interest me. I've never
Okay.
been a sporty guy. I don't understand the rules of sports. I was never involved in sports. I have a twin brother, both of us never did sports ever. And it's not like
Okay.
I don't think anything bad about people who do. I really respect it. And that was something I used to be ashamed of when I was a kid, is that I didn't do sports. And everybody, it's hard when you're a guy and you don't do any kind of sports or understand any kind of sports or even like any kind of sports, because people are like, "Oh, did you see that game?" And you're like, "Yeah." It's like that episode of the IT Crowd. Do you watch the IT Crowd? Have you ever seen that?
No, never
Okay.
seen one episode of it.
Well, it's brilliant. It's a great British TV show. They tried to do an American remake and it was trash. But there's a whole episode about how these footballers, they're trying to be manly men, and there's this website you can go to that like teaches you how to talk like a man and like go and like talk with these Cockney footballer guys. And so they go out to a bar and they're trying to like fit in, and they wind up getting into all this trouble and hilarity ensues. It's a great episode. And that's all, I identified with that episode so hard. I was like, this is me. Because my whole life I used to be in sales, right? And one of my day jobs, and salespeople, very competitive people, very into sports, and like we'd go for work outings and stuff, and everybody's drinking, and they're like, let's go play football, and I'm like, nah, I'm good. You want to go toss a football around in the parking lot? Nah, fine, because you wouldn't. Yeah, I mean, you would think less of me if you saw me try to throw a football. It's not ideal. So
Yeah, I was never very good at sports either. I played soccer for many years, but I was never very fast. Never very fast, but I kicked the ball pretty well. I played
yeah.
fullback, and I was one of those guys. You stay in the back on defense. The ball comes back, and you send it over everybody's head, so your guys that are fast can sprint down the field, get the ball, and potentially get a goal that way.
That's awesome.
But
Yeah, no,
but I was yeah. But you play football games around the neighborhood. Everybody gets together and just play street football and
yeah,
stuff
you
like
do.
that. That was always fun.
You did.
I
I
did.
never.
I love it. That was okay.
I mean,
That was
I
fun.
played,
That was fun.
I did catch with my dad. Like we would go out and play catch, like
Yeah.
baseball. Baseball was kind of a big deal in my house, in my family, because my granddad was an umpire, and was in the Springfield, Missouri Hall of Fame. And he was an umpire and a referee for basketball and did football stuff. I mean, he was a sports editor for the News Leader for years and years and years there. And so he was like widely known amongst all the sports people. So it was also weird because my dad wasn't into sports really. So Jeremy and I weren't into sports. So we were kind of the black sheep of the family. I kind of feel like a little bit, because nobody did anything. And so with sports movies, it takes a lot for me to like them. I like some
Okay.
movies like Bull Durham, or, baseball movies like that. Some of those I like. Necessary Roughness. I don't know if you've ever seen that with Scott Bakula football
Yeah.
movie. I
Yeah.
think
Scott
that's
Bakula.
for
Yeah.
some reason I like that movie, and I love Ted Lasso, which is about soccer,
Oh.
or
Okay.
football to the rest of the world. And I love that show.
Yes.
But it's not because of the soccer that makes me love it. It's it's everything else that I love about that show. But yeah,
Oh yeah.
I've never
Yeah.
seen the Rocky movies, man. I never got around to doing it. It just never interested me. Now I appreciate how the movie got made. I know all the Sylvester Stallone story and all that stuff, and I think that's fantastic. But it's just never been a movie that I've been like, you know what? I really need to see that. I should go back and watch the first Rocky, but I don't see a reason that I would really get into the sequels. And you were talking about Rocky 4 specifically? 4?
Rocky 4. And he's both of them are just ripped to shreds.
Right.
It's just they're so in shape and everything. And just seeing that as a kid, it's like, oh man, I'm going to grow up and be like that one day. Even half as ripped up as both those guys were. And it's just, I don't know. It was just part of who we watch that thing. You kind of get into it. The whole, beating the crap out of somebody else. And beating, the physical aspect of it was fun for me as a kid, and I would watch those things all the time, and so it was always entertaining to watch that. And then there's something like 30 minutes of montages in Rocky 4.
Oh
And
man,
so
that was at the heyday of those, right? Like that was it wasn't
yeah,
late 80s that came out.
it was 85.
So
Rocky
mid
4 came
80s.
out in 85.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean the 80s were the decade of montage.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And like you see one montage of Rocky 4, the entire story of Rocky because it goes through Rocky 1. There's shots of Rocky 1, 2, and 3, him getting beaten the crap out of, Mr. T and all that and Apollo and everything. But those songs during those montages, man, I listen to those. They're in my playlist when I'm riding my bike. Makes me go a little bit faster.
What is
it
it?
truly
Is it
does.
like he's the best around like that, or what?
No,
is it?
that's Karate Kid.
Oh,
and
right,
weirdly
right.
enough, that song was supposed to be in Rocky 3, but Sylvester Stallone didn't like it. So whoever wrote that song got it placed in the Karate Kid movie at the end, the big match scene at the end. I don't know, it's a weird little tidbit thing. That's weird you mentioned that. Man, there's no easy way out when he's after fighting with his wife. He's driving around. He's all pissed off because he wants to go to Russia. Yeah, and Adrian, and they're yelling at each other. It's like, you've seen him. He's, Apollo's dead. He's going to kill you. He's so strong and everything. You can't win. And then he goes out and driving around, thinking about remaining a boxer. And then, of course, all the training scene. He's in Russia, and he doesn't have any of the good equipment. Drago's got like state-of-the-art electronic equipment, weights and trainings in these huge facilities. Rocky's out in the mountains, climbing mountains and using wheelbarrows and training with rocks and stuff, and
ripping logs in half with his bare hands.
Right. Yeah. And then the final scene, he climbs up to the top, or somebody is climbing up to the top of a mountain, and he's just screaming and yelling. It's the end of the song, and this gorgeous shot, mountain range, and the camera circles around him and everything. It was like, man, this is freaking awesome, So now, I don't know. As a kid, it was very entertaining, and I love those movies.
Is Burgess Meredith in all of them, or is he only in the first one?
He dies in the middle of the third one. His character dies in the middle of the third one. Right. Like Rocky gets beaten by Mr. T, and they're in the locker room, and he's almost dead. And he's like, "Did you win? Did you win?" And Rocky's like, "Yeah, we won and everything." But he actually didn't because he knows he's about to die.
Did he have a heart attack in the locker room or something?
Yeah, something like that. You see him clutching his chest earlier. They never really say, but of course, old guy. He has a heart attack and everything. Right. But yeah, he dies in the middle of the third movie. But he comes back in the fifth one as kind of like a memory of him,
like a spirit ghost, like a force ghost, like Yoda.
It's
you're gonna get him, kid. Just hang in there, kid. The force is strong with you, Rocky.
That'd be weird if he starts talking that way in the middle of the thing there. Yeah, that would totally change the outcome.
Strong you are, Rocky. Kick his ass, you Rocky. Sorry.
No, that's funny stuff. It's Rocky 4, and he's remembering stuff that Mickey told him when it was previous movies and everything. So you see him in a couple of later ones. But yeah, his character dies in the third one. I don't know. Just love those movies. They're fun. What was I, 10, 11 years old around those years? So it was.
Yeah. I mean, I would never picture you as a big Rocky fan, but that's good to know. It's good. I'm learning a lot about you. You would get kicked in the balls, for $500. You'd love to hit somebody in the face and pay them $100 just to do it for the pleasure. And you love the Rocky movies. So you're a much more violent person than I give you credit for, Brian. There's a hidden darkness within you.
There is a hidden darkness. Yeah, I don't know what came. I don't know why I thought of that, but I was like, I just want to see what you say. It's like, of course, I'm not actually going to do it. I just want to see your reaction. Because you had a brother. I had a brother. My brother and I would kill each other, fighting and wrestling around all the time. Wrestling around.
Threw each other
that's
down
what brothers
stairs.
do and everything.
Yeah, I mean, it was.
Yeah. There was one time my brother had my arm, and he had his knee in my elbow, and he was pulling my arm back, and I was screaming. It was so painful, and I came around with my left, and I hit him in the face, not even really knowing what I was doing because it hurt so bad. I just big left to his face, left, and bruised his face. And he finally stopped. But yeah, bending a limb the wrong way.
Oh God.
So much pain.
Right.
So much pain.
No, Jeremy
And
and
then
we were twins, so we fought all the time too. And
Yeah.
when we were really, really young, my mom was a waitress at Bombay Bicycle Club. If that dates us, because Bombay Bicycle Club hasn't been a thing across the country since the 80s. But we were fighting with little cocktail swords that she brought home for us. And we were like sword fighting with those. And he lunged at me, and thank God I missed his eye, but it went up to the hilt up his nose. And we're kids, like little kids, but it was like, right up his nose. And he's like, and I'm like, oh my God. And then he like feels it. He's like, just starts screaming. And my dad comes in. He's like, what are you guys doing? Oh my God. And he's running. And I remember him running Jeremy into the bathroom, trying to help him. And I'm out there like crying, because I'm like, I killed my brother. I didn't know. And he's in the bathroom. He's like, why is he bleeding out of both nostrils? Because it started bleeding out of both sides. But yeah, no, Jeremy's he's not like a vegetable or anything. He's okay.
I was going to say, damage his brain or something.
Well, I mean, Jerry's still out on that one, but
okay.
I think any brain damage that he might have was not from that sword incident. It might have been from other things that we did. One time we were fighting in the house when my parents weren't home. We lived in this kind of cheap house in Texas. And we were fighting, and he was chasing me, and I ran into the bathroom, and I closed and locked the door, and he starts banging on the door, and I'm banging on the other side, trying to hold him off. The whole door frame dislodges from the wall and breaks and falls into the bathroom. And we were like, oh shit, like, oh my God, we're like 8, I think, around this time, 7 or 8 years old or something like that. And so we're like, oh my God, oh my God. So then we're like, oh, Dad's going to kill us. And we tried to put the door back, but it was like all cockamamie. I mean, it was screwed up. And we were like, well, we saw my dad's truck pull up. So we go and we lay on 2 different couches in the living room and just pretend like we're asleep, because we don't know what else to do. So we're like, he won't get mad at us if we're asleep. So we're sleeping, and Dad comes in and he's like, oh, okay, the guys are asleep. And then he goes in towards the bathroom. We hear this, what the hell? Oh, guys, what? Get up. I know you're not sleeping. We got so much trouble.
We didn't do it? What are you talking about?
Like,
Nothing. I don't know what happened, Dad.
Oh, so weird. What happened? Like, we were home by ourselves, and nobody else could have broken the door. It had to be us. But yeah, we got rough. I mean, we were the same age the whole time, so
of course,
equally matched strength for the most part.
Oh, well, see, my brother's 4 years older than me. And he was, he's big. He was bigger than me for a while, but then I started getting as big as him. And then I actually,
he met his match
on the shoulders. Exactly. I got older, and then we really started wrestling and fighting each other. But when we were little, we had bunk beds. He had the top bunk, and I had the bottom. And he would throw toys down at me from the top. Yeah. And so I'd climb up the ladder and just jump on him. We started killing each other. I don't know how many times we fell off the top bunk together on the ground.
Yeah.
At least a dozen times. You get hurt. I'm amazed neither of us ever broke a bone.
Right.
I mean, that thing's like 6 feet off the ground, at least 6 feet.
Yeah.
And we're fighting on the way down, falling down. So yeah, we kill each other, and my dad would destroy us too, for fighting and everything. So it was a lot of fighting. But then when we got older, and I was starting to beat him every once in a while and pin him and really hurt him, then we kind of cooled down. He didn't like me winning after all the years of him beating me up.
Yeah.
So
yeah, when you're dominant,
cooled off when I got big.
Yeah, your rival becomes equal match. You gotta lay back some.
Because there was another time, I was like sitting on the ground, and he was on my back. He was like choking me or something like that. And I don't know if, you get that adrenaline going, and I like flipped him over my back, and he landed on his butt right in front of me. And it was kind of like a momentum thing too. So it wasn't like I was totally lifting his weight. And, and that really surprised him that I was able to, get him over my back that way. And, that was, again, one of our last fights as brothers.
I wanted to be a stuntman. I knew I was going to be an actor and a makeup artist, but I also wanted to be a stuntman because I thought it would be so fun. So we used to choreograph fights too when we weren't really fighting, and he would we'd punch each other and throw each other over the couch where the couch would flip over and do all these stunts. And then I started fucking up my back doing that stuff. I was doing that in high school too. We were doing stuff where we'd hit each other with chairs like wrestlers. Or I used to do this stunt all the time where somebody would hit me in the face and I'd stumble backwards, hit a chair, flip over the chair, do a backwards somersault and stand back up and then fall back down, kind of like Charlie Chaplin or something. And I used to love doing that stuff. And, all of our friends, we'd all be like, yeah, this is cool, And then somewhere in college, I started being like, oh my God, I just can't do this anymore. And now I think I'm really paying the price, a la like Chevy Chase on Saturday Night Live, who's like, I think he got addicted to painkillers or something because he used to do all those Gerald Ford impersonations where he'd fall over. And I know he really messed up his back from what I understand, but same thing. It's like when you're young, everybody's like, you got to be careful. And you're like, no, because if you hurt yourself, you're like, that's okay. It's okay. I'll be fine in like an hour, But
yeah, you heal quickly.
But you think you do, but your body is just racking them up. It's just like, okay, all right.
Yeah.
You think we're going to bring this one back in about 10 years. Don't worry about it. It's coming, and it's just like slowly stacking that deck to bring it back up to you. Oh, you remember that time in 1996 when you flipped over that bar in the gym? Well, okay, time to pay the piper, and then you're like, no, and you're in bed for a week for an old injury that you didn't even know that you got really hurt on.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. I never really had anything sneak up on me, but, he taught me how to fight. I never really got in another fight with anyone else. I think it was one kid I got in a fight with. I don't even remember what it was in 5th or 6th grade. And, you don't really fight and punch each other like a boxing match. You just kind of wrestle around and, and try and do that when you're that age. So, so I wouldn't really call it a fight. We're just kind of messing around more than being angry at each other. So, but that was the only fight I ever got into at school or whatever. And it was after school, so.
I used to get myself into fights. I got into a lot of fights, not like fist fights. My mouth, I'm pretty quick-witted and I would talk big game and I would get a lot of people pissed at me, but then I could easily talk myself out of a fight too, I learned to do that pretty quick because I was terrified of actually getting into a fight. I didn't want to get beat up at all. And I'm kind of a pacifist. I'm obviously a pacifist, but I've always been that way. So I never really wanted to get into a fight. But when we were really young, I did stick up for my brother a lot because he used to have like chronic ear infections, right? So he had tubes put in his ears, and his ears were very sensitive, and it made him, he couldn't hear very well. And if all it would take is somebody to touch his ear, and he was on the ground because he was so sensitive, and it would hurt him. And I remember one kid was picking on him in Texas when we were growing up, and this kid it started hitting him in the ear. And I got pissed, and I grabbed one of those giant-ass Texas pine cones, that we have there that are like watermelon size. And I chucked it at this kid's head, and it hit the side of his head and cut his head. And the kid got mad, ran at me, kicked me in the balls so hard that I flew through our closed door into the laundry room and slid across the floor. And I just started screaming because I thought that he had permanently damaged me, and I was like, oh, and my parents were sleeping. This was in the morning on the weekend. And I ran in there and I was screaming to my parents that I was never going to be able to have kids because this guy had kicked me in the balls so hard. And that kind of stuff, I used to, I would stick up for my brother. One time we got into a rock fight, and that was bad because I did get hit in the side of the head with a rock. And we were getting in like Stephen King's It, right? It's like the kids there were these bully kids in the neighborhood. We didn't grow up in one of the neighborhoods we lived in, what really wasn't great. And we were playing, and these kids came over and tried to kick us off of the playground that we were playing in. It was like some old church playground that nobody was at on Saturdays, so we would go over there and play. And we got mad about it, and we just started throwing rocks at them, which is stupid. I mean, these little and they were pretty big pebbles too. They were those round stones that you put down in flower beds. But they were all over the place there around all the trees and stuff. So we were just grabbing those and chucking rocks at each other really hard too. Like somebody could have lost an eye. I mean, it was bad. Nobody got really seriously hurt, but we were definitely bloody after that one. That was probably the most I would say, aggressive fight I ever got into. Never got into an actual like fist fight though. Like you said, like
Yeah.
never did that. Kind of glad, but it'd be interesting to do that and like understand how that feels to be in an actual fist fight.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think my brother and I did enough damage to each other, so I kind of knew what it was like.
Right.
And this one kid I wrestled around. This one kid I wrestled around with. It was like it's like I don't know that either of us won, but we really weren't hurting each other that much because I was like, my brother's way tougher than this kid. So I don't know, but I don't know. Boys fight. That's what happens. Brothers fight. That's what happens. So I don't know. So therefore, the Rocky movies resonated with me a little bit more
Yeah.
than if I was a single child or only had a sister or something like that. So I don't know. Those songs come on. I see the movie come on. There's a lot of, just like any movie of your childhood comes back to you, flooding back to you of watching those as a kid and thinking about those things. So I don't know. Watching those things made me think about that today. So.
Yeah. So did you watch that today? You went back and revisited Rocky IV today? Oh, nice.
Yeah, I don't know. Just like the movie and everything, the whole series, and one interesting about it, being a filmmaker, this might interest you, is that they film the boxing scenes backwards. Apparently, it's easier to take off the bloody makeup and all that stuff, and it looks better if they start out with it all messed up and everything, and then they shoot the rounds going from whatever it was 15 back to 1, and that's how they shot all those boxing scenes.
That's
in the Rocky
strange.
movies.
I wonder why. I mean, I the only thing I can think of is that they get so sweaty shooting over and over again, and that if you put the makeup on as you go, it gets harder and harder when you're sweating and you have to completely clean them up and then try to make them look worse. So I guess, but that is interesting. I wouldn't normally think that that's the case.
Yeah.
But they shoot them in sequence,
but
backwards though. But it is all shot in sequence, right? Like, so they would shoot everything in that. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, so they start out with round 15 where they're the worst and most blood and the most damage and everything. And then I remember Sylvester Stallone, some behind the scenes, something or other saying, "Oh yeah, we shoot them backwards because it looks. I guess it looks better on film when you take it off rather than putting it on and advancing it." But I don't know. I just remember him saying that.
Interesting.
And then some of those shots, with him and Dolph Lundgren, those are real shots. They're really hitting each other really hard.
Right. Well,
and Sylvester Stallone.
Oh, they're hitting each other hard too. They're not marking it. They're actually really hitting each other hard.
They're actually hitting each other, and then they have there's different weights of the gloves. I think they have 8-ounce gloves, 12-ounce gloves, what have you. And these gloves were like, you can't use these gloves anymore because you can really cause a lot of brain damage. The ones they were using in the film, and you see Dolph Lundgren really hitting him in the head, and then there was another behind the scenes thing, and Sylvester Stallone says, "Oh man, I felt that in my butt. It was like a shot of pain from his head all the way down his spine. And that's on film and everything." And then he got so injured one time, they had to lift him to a hospital, and Sylvester Stallone almost died from one of these hits that they were doing because I guess they were filming some of it, and Dolph Lundgren, he's holding back. He's not really hitting him that hard, and so therefore it doesn't look that good on camera. And Sylvester Stallone's like, "No, hit me, really hit me." And then he really hit him, and it really almost killed the guy. So,
there's a reason we're not supposed to do that stuff. I mean, I
was like,
God bless them. The stuff they go through it's amazing. It is amazing what they do. And that's why, they deserve an Academy Award. Honestly, they deserve a category. They should be getting it. I mean, that work is so hard. It's so hard, and people do not give them enough credit. And they do way more than some people think. Some people think it's the lead actor doing it, and almost always it's not. But oh my God, it is crazy. Even if you're supposed to fake hit somebody, sometimes you do have to mark it, and you'll pull the punch, which means you're still making contact. Like, you can still get hurt, but you're pulling it back at the last minute. So you're not just following through, but you're trying to make it look, and it is a skill to make that look right. And usually when you're doing a stunt, it's the person on the receiving end that really sells the stunt, right?
Right.
When we were shooting Shadowbound, you remember Shadowbound.
I love Shadowbound.
Yeah. When we were shooting Shadowbound, which we worked on together, we were shooting that scene out at the at the bonfire at the end in the last episode, in episode 5.
Yeah.
If you're watching the series, it's episode 5. If you're watching the movie, it's near the end of the movie. And it's the I'm being held by one of the henchmen of the main bad guy, who's a really great guy that, and he had, like a scar through his eyes. This is really quiet henchman guy, and I didn't know him very well, but he really wanted it to look real. I'm supposed to hit him with my head and knock him backwards and get free, and then I start fighting right with the bad guys. Well, he was when we were shooting, I'm directing too, trying to make sure everything's going well, and he's holding me, and right before, we're rolling, and he's like, "Nathan, I want you to really hit me." And I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "Hit me, just really hit me. I want it to look good." I'm like, "I'm not doing that. I know."
Right.
And he's like, "Come on, come on." And he was like really wanting me to hit him because he wanted it to look good. And I'm like, "Dude, first of all, this is black and white. Second of all, we're going to put filters on this thing to make it look like it's a movie from the 20s. So it's going to be a little fuzzy. It's not going to be really crisp and clear. It is in black and white. Nobody's going to see my head actually hit you. And if you start bleeding all over me, I don't want that." And we
Right.
got, I had to like convince the guy to not like try to put his face up when I'm putting my head back, because I really did not want to make an extra.
True commitment. That's
Yeah.
true commitment. Yeah.
Yeah. And I actually talked to him the other day about this because he called me to talk about some other project that we're talking about. And he was, we were talking about things from that movie and, weird things that happened. And I was like, "Yeah, I can't believe you really wanted me to hit you, in that." And I was like, "That's the only thing that I really remember being very strange, with you, and being like, hey, I don't want to do that." And he was like, "I just wanted it to look real." And I'm like, "I get it, but it's not, I want to be professional. I don't want to have you, if something, God forbid, went wrong and I broke your nose or something, or made your nose go up into your brain and you died, or you got really hurt and we had to airlift you." I mean, it not only it would ruin the shoot, it would waste everybody's time, and it would hurt you, and then I'd be responsible as the producer of the movie for the bills. It's like there's reasons people don't do shit like that, So even on an indie movie, when things go, I mean, look at this whole thing with the gun on set for Rust. It's like there are precautions put in place for a reason, and especially even on a union movie, which Shadowbound wasn't, but when you're doing a professional movie and you don't bend the rules. The rules are there, especially with that kind of stuff, with safety things. Those are there for a reason.
Safety.
And whenever something is bent, or too lax and fail safes are not put into place, then people can get really hurt or killed. And there's a reason that you don't do stuff like that. It should always be adhered to.
And that makes me remember Brandon Lee.
Oh,
too.
Jesus. That's horrible.
The Crow, same situation.
Yep.
Why the hell are there live rounds anywhere near this movie set? Why are they even there?
Well, in his was a little different
Live
from what I
rounds.
understand. I don't think it was a live round in his. I think he got hit with the wad, didn't he? Didn't he get killed by the wad coming out of the gun because it was too close to him? I can't remember if that, because I know Rust was a live round, but I didn't know. For some reason, I was thinking that Brandon Lee was killed by the wad in the gun, because it still can fire if you're not careful, and it shouldn't have been pointed at him, or I can't remember. It's been a bit, but and anymore, I was listening to another podcast that I absolutely love, Postmortem with Mick Garris, and he always interviews great horror directors, filmmakers, actors, and musicians and stuff. And they were talking about this issue on a Q&A, and I thought it was really great. But they were basically making the statement that I think the union is actually going into meetings now to talk about this, but is there a need to even have live rounds anymore, or even blanks on set anymore, because you can do it all digitally and it looks real? I mean, you don't get the fire back, but you can still act like it's there, and you can have sound effects on set live, but you don't really need any more. With the advent of great special effects that we have, you don't even really need a gun to go off on set. It's not necessary. I mean, guns in general on a set are not necessary at all anymore. Right. Like to have even a blank pistol, it's just not. Theater's a whole different animal there, because you want the you need it to be loud or whatever. But a blank pistol on stage that's properly checked and everything, it's a little different than in a movie.
Well, and you could use even on stage, you could use a cap gun. I was like, okay, it doesn't sound like a bullet going off, but everybody gets the sound effect.
Yeah, I don't know.
I understand that.
The cap gun thing, I've used cap guns on stage before, and it always bothers me. But there's different kinds of cap guns
That
that
it
you
doesn't.
can use.
You don't like it because it doesn't sound authentic.
Because it sounds so much like like if you get a cap gun from a store, and you paint it to look real or whatever, it sounds so goofy when you're shooting it that it actually can take the audience out of it, and they could be sitting there snickering because your cap gun sounds like pow pow, and somebody's like overacting like they're dying, and you're like, come on, So yeah, cap gun, but there are different kinds of caps that they make that you can get some. But I mean, a true blank pistol. I mean, usually on stage you're not having machine guns or semi-automatics and stuff. Typically, you have a revolver or something which you check repeatedly, and it's usually one. Like you don't have big, massive shootouts in plays for the most part, unless you're doing like a Martin McDonough piece or something where they have like crazy shootouts. Like I think the Lieutenant of Inishmore has a huge shootout at the end of it. This play, I've been wanting to do that play actually, but yeah.
And here's another aspect that made me think of this, talking about all this at the end of Fargo, where
the movie
Frances McDormand, the movie. I'm sorry, the movie. The end of the movie where Frances McDormand is shooting the guy who's running away. You can look down the barrel of the gun, and it's all filled up with like cement or something. I was like, that's not a real gun. You can tell that it's a fake gun on there. You can see it on film and everything. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I can see it. But of course, safety issues like that, man, you should do that on these sets. It's not even a working gun.
Right.
It doesn't even work because the barrels are filled with cement or something.
But so
there's no possible way a bullet could leave that gun.
Right. And when that movie was made, you probably couldn't see that even in the theater. I mean, I saw that movie in the theater. I didn't notice that. But with the advent of HD, there's a lot of things now that we see that you couldn't see before. Like if you go back and you watch the HD transfers of like Star Trek The Next Generation, you can see like seams in people's makeup. You can see like black duct tape covering the really advanced technical screens and shit like that. Oh, sorry. Hold on. I just had we
got a lighting issue for those of you listening. Nathan's working on his light. There we go.
Something just happened on my computer, and I thought everything crashed, but it didn't. So I'm good. I'm here.
All right.
But yeah, on Star Trek: The Next Generation, you can see that. You can see like the illuminated screens and stuff. You can tell that they're just illuminated screens, and sometimes just to hold them together, they've got like black pieces of gaff tape on it or something. And that's all things that you couldn't see that when it was on television because we didn't have HD. We didn't even know to me, Star Trek, when I mean, you probably remember this too, but when Star Trek: The Next Generation was on, it was like so crisp and clean. We were like, wow, this looks fantastic. It looks amazing. And I thought this is where modern, you could tell movies from the 80s because they were a little bit grainier. And you're like, oh, so like 90s movies are, late 80s, early 90s movies, and then late 90s movies, you can always tell there's just a quality difference. And then now you go back and you watch some movie from 1999 or 2000 and you're like, ugh. Like, holy shit, this looks so dated. We were trying to watch a movie last night. We were going to watch Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. And my kids, my son was like, I love Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, by the way. I love Shane Black. I really do. His writing and the movies, I just love it. So we're going to watch Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. And my son was like, I don't want to watch an old movie. And I'm like, it's not an old movie. It's a new movie. And he's like, it's a new movie. And and he was like, Dad, this is from 2005. It is an old movie. And I'm like, well, holy shit, I guess you're right. To you, this is a very old movie. I mean, he was born in 2009. So it was pre him, and I'm like, oh my God. Because to me, an old movie is like something from the 70s. Like maybe early 80s now I can consider to be an old movie, in the 80s. But a 90s movie is like pushing it for me to be an old movie. And the 2000s definitely is not a fucking old movie. I'm sorry.
Not an old movie. Sorry.
It's not. But, we watched the trailer and he's just like, no, I don't really feel like watching an old movie. And I was like, God, I weep for the future.
Yeah. Wow, for that movie to be considered old, that makes me feel old. Wow, that is not, the fact that he thinks that
it's pushing 20 years though, 2005, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
Doesn't seem as long ago though.
that's
I don't know.
crazy to me. Yeah,
But I will say, but what you're saying earlier about movies, movies from the '90s or something like that, we thought they looked so good, but now you look at them. One movie I saw recently that I thought was amazing, and I still think it's amazing, but you go back and look at it, and like, that's not near as awesome as it is as what they are now. Was the first Matrix movie,
oh,
and you go back and watch some of that stuff, I'm like, whoa, because you see the new one that just came out, and it's just unbelievable, spectacularly looking
I haven't seen the new one
movie.
yet.
But
Is it good?
it's a thinker. I had to watch it a couple of times to really get what they were going for. Huge fan of that series, even though they kind of dropped the ball a bit on the second and third one. But the first one sets it up perfectly.
The first one's an amazing movie. Amazing.
And and the whole concept of it was it's why it's so popular and everything. But like, you watch it now, and man, whoa. Special effects come a long way just in that franchise alone. You see, because I watched the new one and then I went back and watched that first one. Like, oh, whoa, that seems ancient,
Yeah.
But I realized they made a whole lot of breakthrough things. The thing with bullet time and the slow motion stuff.
Right.
And
They innovated
that
all
circular
that. Yeah, that
thing.
was all created for that, and then was used in everything after that. It's like, if you go back and I love Lord of the Rings, right? It's still one of my favorite. If you can, all three of those movies in one giant film is still in my top 10, maybe top 5 sometimes. I have a rotating list. Movies of all time, because I combine them into one story, and I just think how great it is of an adaptation and how perfect those movies are in so many ways. The casting and the cinematography and the music and everything is just, and the effects. And I think it's because they blended so perfectly digital effects and practical effects. And that is the key to me. Whenever I teach a makeup class or anything like that, I'm always talking about that, how the best of the best things, it's not all digital, or, the digital enhances what's actually in the frame. And I think that's where we really get something that feels real and visceral and emotional, is because there's something real behind, that was in the shot of the camera that actually got in the lens. And those movies, the first one came out like, I think the same year or within around a year's time of the first Harry Potter movie and episode 1. And it was this little company out of New Zealand, Weta, right? And Weta, and it blew Industrial Light and Magic out of the water. Like, if you go back and you look at that episode 1, Star Wars The Phantom Menace, and you go back and you look at that first Harry Potter movie, they look like Nintendo games, like old school NES Nintendo games, compared to the graphics and the effects in Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring, the Balrog sequence, all of that. I mean, it's amazing. And they created a lot of and innovated a lot of the stuff there too. I think is it Massive that they created, which is like that program that like randomizes large crowds and groups of people. I can't remember what it's called, but that's what I'm thinking. Daryl would know this. Our friend Daryl Claunch, who's a VFX guy, which we're going to have on the show sometime, because he's awesome. And I love hearing his stories about the industry and working on things. He has worked on everything from Marvel movies like yourself to great TV shows as well. I think he's done, he does a lot of like bullet hits and stuff for like Walking Dead and shit like that. But, we talk about VFX stuff a lot, and practical effects, because I'm a practical effects guy, and he's a visual effects guy. But I think it's called Massive, and they innovated that, and the fire that was on the Balrog and stuff, because pre Lord of the Rings, fire looked so shitty in movies. It really did.
Yeah.
Like, it always looked like cartoons, like Roger Rabbit. It's like, this is just layered in and trying to make it look real. It just never quite worked. But then after Lord of the Rings, they had really done just some amazing things. And I go back, and I know it's got a lot of filters, and it kind of looks, what we would consider the Marvel-y kind of look nowadays. But I still love the VFX and the practical effects in those Lord of the Rings movies, not the Hobbit movies. Very different. I am not a fan of the Hobbit movies.
Okay.
I never got into the Hobbit movies. It's all digital. I never could get into it. It doesn't feel like the same world even to me. But I love the Lord of the Rings movies. I love them, and I still do. And the VFX and everything, it's just, it's like transports me to another world. It's amazing.
Yeah. Oh, man, that's great. Yeah, I hear you on that one. And one shot that I was always impressed with, and I think I saw some of the behind the scenes on it, was Gandalf and Frodo on the wagon in the very first movie.
With the forced
And the
perspective.
perspective, yeah, and the forced perspective. I was like, because it's two normal human beings, but
Yep.
one's a normal human being and one's supposed to be, Frodo and everything. And then, but you see that being a man, I'm like, wow, that is amazing camera work and how they do that. And
Yep.
it just looks so seamless on the,
Yep.
just what you're saying. It looks so good to what they did. And then Gandalf's inside the house, and he actually hit his head on the ceiling, and they
Right.
left it in. Like it was an accident, but he actually did it on as an accident, and they left it in the movie. But some of that stuff, the perspective of the
Yep.
the little guys and normal people, that amazingly good stuff.
That whole sequence at the table where he's eating with Frodo or with Bilbo, with Ian Holm. God, I miss Ian Holm. One of my favorite character actors of all time. I love.
Oh yeah.
But that scene with Ian Holm where they're at the table, and he's given the speech about I feel thin, Gandalf, like butter spread over too much bread, all that stuff. Well, that whole sequence it had a moving camera, and so parts of the table moved with the camera, and parts of it was all forced perspective. So parts of it were close up with like giant apples and shit like that, and then some of it, to make Gandalf look big and Bilbo look small, he was farther away, but they had to make it all look like, and they did that whole thing in that movie with what they called bigatures, which were regular people in stilts with these large arms and hands on, because we wouldn't see them except from maybe the shoulder or the torso down, amidst all the hobbits that had to look like they were really tiny. But they didn't do it digitally. They only did digital stuff when they absolutely had to. And God, that's what makes that movie so awesome, because it really, when they bump into somebody and they're really big and they've just got this large puppet hand that's so well done, it looks real, and they touch them on the shoulder or something. It's like, oh my God, it was so believable,
Yeah.
And I don't know if today they don't put that much effort into things. It's more like, oh, we got to get this like even the Hobbit movies. It's like, oh, we don't have a huge schedule. We got to just shoot this shit. So we don't have time to really plot and plan and develop this stuff or to make it work. We just have to do it digitally because it's easy. And I hate that. I really hate, just because it's easier, it doesn't mean it's better. In fact, usually it means it's worse, honestly.
Right.
It always does. And, I know Ian McKellen had a terrible time on the new movies, on the Hobbit movies. Because, I heard he even had a breakdown shooting it because it was all green screen. And he was just like, I don't understand what I'm doing. Like, please, I need... I couldn't imagine.
Well, and that's why the three, original Star Wars movies will always be the best. It's because it's models and actual practical things. I mean, like the asteroid sequence in Empire Strikes Back, it's actual rocks and potatoes and models and stuff. And it's real stuff. Makes it look 10 times better. I mean, obviously the visual effects stuff did not exist at that time, so they had to do that. But then you're talking about Phantom Menace and other movies, and now all the stuff with The Mandalorian and that new thing where they can make them look anywhere. I was like, it still looks fake. To me, it does anyway. I know it's a revolutionary technology, but the real stuff always looks better. The models,
always,
the miniatures, always looks better.
That's why I love The Mandalorian. If you look at The Mandalorian and you look at the Book of Boba Fett, they are doing those with practical effects on set on purpose to get back to what the lived in feel of the original Star Wars. And I think that is brilliant. And that, I think, is one of the reasons that those shows specifically have resonated so greatly with fans, because when they go into the cantina, there's people with makeup in there. There's animatronics. There's puppets. It's not just CG characters floating around in this world that look real polished and sleek and can't move like real people or real entities. And then they enhance that with a little bit of digital work, here and there. But those things feel real. I mean, even, what is its name? The little puppet that was the little mini Yoda. I can't remember its name.
Grogu or something like that.
Grogu. Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah,
something like
but that was a real puppet. It wasn't digital. It was so smooth. A lot of times it looked digital, but it wasn't. It was a puppet. Oh, I think 99% of the time it was a puppet. And I think, how cool is that? I mean, look at what we can do. We can have it blink. We can have realistic looking facial features that are like moving. And I mean, we've come so far with what we can do physically with visual effects or with practical effects that we don't have to make everything animated. We should blend the two together when necessary and then tell real stories, real grounded stories with real like human heart in them and soul, and that's what gets an audience into it. But studios don't see that. They're just like, let's, it's too difficult to figure that stuff out. And we have to plan too much. We need to get this out by next summer, because if we don't, then we're not going to make money. And just here's $1 billion. Go make this movie, or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I'll keep referencing Star Wars because I love the original series, and I do love the newer movies too. But the original series, the original trilogy, will always be my favorite. When they were making Empire Strikes Back, they actually had Yoda as a puppet, and the people on set were talking to Yoda more than they were talking to Frank Oz, who was the voice and the puppeteer of Yoda. Like, people just working on the set, like he's talking through Yoda and everything because people were more responding to the puppet than to him. I was like, that's how good it was, and that's how good it looked.
Yeah,
But and then they fully digitized Yoda for some of those
and
prequels.
He looked bad. He looked bad in the prequels.
It looked bad.
He did.
I was like, man, look at Empire. Look how good it is because it's a real puppet.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, he's doing all the flips and the lightsaber work and everything in that thing. I was like, that's kind of cool, but it just doesn't look near as good as obviously real puppets and stuff. So.
Totally
disappointing, but technology is inevitable, and all of these things. They want to, we've already talked about AI. Is like, can we do this or should we do this? It's that same old argument. So
totally.
I was like, let's try and see if we can do it all with CGI. Forget the practical effects, but I do love what you're saying that they're integrating them now more so.
Yeah,
it's a bit of both.
Massive horror fan, and I think all the real true horror buffs out there have always been screaming about practical effects and how practical effects are the way to go, and how like we want our werewolf movies to have a werewolf in them, not like a digital werewolf like that shit movie Cursed that was awful and basically took out Rick Baker's studio. But like, we want things that are really in the camera, and I think there's enough push for that, and people complain enough that they've really been doing, and it's easier because of the advent of all these great products out there and things, that it's actually easier to build things and make them look realistic than it used to be. So since the technology is there to do it, why not do it? Why not? We know we can make things look digital, but it still doesn't look real yet. It's getting there. There's still, oh my God, you can do some amazing things digitally, but when it comes to actual people and characters and things, the best is when it's integrated. And I think VFX people also feel the same way. Every VFX person that I know, and I'm sure a lot of VFX people being out there in LA too and working on different things. I know a whole bunch of people that do that, and all of them, it's like, they love VFX stuff, obviously, and they admire it, but they also see how great it is when they are combined, when they're, utilized together with solid performances, solid directors who understand how to shoot VFX and how to shoot action shots and everything. It's filmmaking is just such a collaborative art form, all in all, and it takes such artistry from every single level of it that if you have a rock solid team of people doing something, you can really make something magical and tell an amazing story. But it has to have the character or the heart, otherwise it's hollow. And there's so many movies that are made today that are hollow because they don't get that, and they just are about the visual fluff. But some of the Marvel movies feel like that to me. It's just like visual fluff, action crap. It's just boring. But then you look at movies like I'll just mention James Gunn's movies that you were involved with, the second one with the Guardians of the Galaxy. I love those movies, and I know that there's people that don't, but to me, those movies are set aside from the typical Marvel movies, and there's a few others that I think are like this too. But It's beautiful to look at. It's super bright and colorful. It has great music and great score. I mean, great music. Some of the best music in any because they're using like all sorts of different, genre tunes and stuff. But it also has a lot of heart to it, and it's
Yeah.
about real characters going through some things. And they did use a lot of practical effects. I know that James Gunn really uses makeup where he can. He uses practical on-set things. He builds sets. They do everything they can in the camera, and everything else gets built outside. And I just praise it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and one thing I saw recently, which is again absolutely stunning, was that movie Encanto, and it was like the most recent animated film by Disney. Man, and you're watching some of these things, you're watching like the hair and the clothes move around, and it's so unbelievably detailed. It's like you can do amazing things with animation, visual effects and everything. But as far as live action stuff, I'd much rather see practical things, mixed in with what you're saying, the digital stuff, because once you start noticing it, takes you out of it.
Yeah.
Takes me out of it. It's like because I notice, I was like, oh, that just looks bad or it looks weird and something's wrong with it, And I'm starting to notice this rather than paying attention to what the character's saying, what the story's supposed to be. So I think that's part of the experience too. Is like keep the audience into it by making it look as good as possible, so they just get drawn into the movie more and enjoy it more because it's that good, rather than just kind of half-ass it visually or cheap it out physically, visually.
Speaking on these same lines, you brought up animation, and and we're not talking now. I'm talking specifically about animation in a completely animated world, not in a live action thing that things are animated in. But do you ever watch anime? Do you ever get into that? Have you ever?
I've never gotten into it. People recommend it all the time.
Sure.
How good the stories are and how good some of the music is and everything. And I have lots of very different tastes, and I'll give anything a try. Somebody recommends it to me, you recommend something to me, I will give it a try. A new series, I always give it at least 3 episodes, but I've never that's one aspect of entertainment I never really got into was anime as a whole, but I have watched some of it.
I'm right there with you, man. Okay, so I never got into anime. I had some really good friends in college who were super into it, and I just couldn't get into it, right? They would tell me to watch some things. I'd watch some things with them, and I was just like, yeah, okay. It has a certain style. Like when I was a kid, when we were kids, Voltron was on, and we'd watch Voltron. That was about as anime as I could get, and that was pretty mainstream, right? But then you get into like Vampire Hunter D. I watched that in college, and I thought that's as cool, but it's really stylized, and it's like I had this idea of what anime was. Well, my kids are both teenagers, and both my kids are really into anime, and their friends are really into anime. So they got me into anime, and now I can safely say I'm very into anime. Not all anime, but there's some things I like that I really love. There's some tropes in there that you're just like, okay, God, this is the typical anime thing they're gonna do. Like explaining exactly what's going through their head and what their style is and all that stuff before they fight or whatever. But there is one show that I could tell you is unlike any other anime that I have seen that I think the world might agree with me right now too, because I just heard that it's Finley, my son, was telling me the other day that it might have surpassed Breaking Bad as having the most watched episode or the most highly rated episode or something on, I don't know. Because Ozymandias, the episode of Breaking Bad, which is another one of my favorite shows, was like the highest watched episode of any show I think ever or something. But Attack on Titan just beat it, I think. And I will say, and I'm not sure because I didn't read the article or whatever. Finley was telling me this, and he finds a lot of random facts online from weird sites. And I'm like, that is absolutely not true, Finn. He's like, yeah, it says so right here. And I'm like, yeah, but you're on like moviepoopshoot.com. Like, what the hell? So, but no, I have to say Attack on Titan is a brilliant show that is, it's right up there with the world building of like, Game of Thrones or like, I don't know, some of those really intricate shows that like things just like the OA or something like, I love the OA too, where things are just like twisty, turny, like what's really happening. It's so intricate with its world building and characterizations. It's unlike anything I have ever seen. And it happens to be animated, and it is animated in a beautiful style. 2 different companies did it because it starts with one company and then it changed to another partway through its run. It's in its last season now, and it is getting ready to end. But the story is so emotionally impacting and beautiful, and it says a lot about humanity and about our desire for war and our desire to separate ourselves from others, but also our desire to fight until the bitter end to try to make things right. It is about all the big things that make us human, right? And all the little things, all the interconnections and the people in our lives. And it is gut-wrenching at times. It is horrific at times. It is action-packed and thrilling, and I can eat this show up. I could watch this show over and over again and not get bored because there's always something to go back and watch. Because when you find out what, like, all these things, it's like, oh my God, this has been happening the whole time, and that's been happening the whole time. And holy God, if anybody wants to give an anime a chance, Attack on Titan is the way to go, in my opinion. And I strongly urge you to check out Attack on Titan. Right now, the last half of the last season is on. It's only in Japanese right now. They haven't put the dubbed version on. But if you go back, you can binge it. I think it's on Hulu. Parts of it are on Netflix, depending, but I think it's all on Hulu. And man, and the music is amazing in it. You'll really love they have, in a lot of animes, they switch up their themes like halfway through a season. So sometimes it's with storylines, and sometimes it's just halfway through a season. They'll have one theme and then they'll change it, and they do the same with the ending credits. So it's not the same theme the whole time. And a lot of anime have really they made fun of it on South Park and other shows. Like, anime themes can be kind of goofy. This show, it's epic. It's epic. Their themes are epic, and they only get more epic. And they're shot I say shot like it's actual cinematography. It's not. It's animated, but it feels like it's shot in a camera. And the way they move around the characters and everything, it is. Oh, Bryan, it is. I can't say anything else other than, if I could sum it all up in one word, epic. You have to check it out, because I'd love to talk to you about it.
Well, if you're going off on it this much and you like it this much, now I have to watch it, because I really respect your opinion about these things. And I've checked. That's why I say I always check things out. People give me a recommendation, of course I'll check this out. But if you're gushing this much over it, I'm sure I'll love it too,
dude. If you will give it 3 episodes, like you said, you give it 3 to 5 episodes, I think you'll be hooked on it too, and then it only gets better from there. It only
always
gets
do.
better.
It doesn't matter, even if I don't like it. Like, even within the first episode, whatever the series is, whatever it is, I will always give it at least 3, because you watch the first couple episodes. Some of my favorite TV series of all times, and man, they're just clunking around.
Oh my
and
God,
it's just,
I know. It takes a while to find your voice in TV.
Exactly. So I was like, always give it 3. That's my rule for a new series.
I'll do you one better. I usually give the entire first, for the most part. If something really turns me off, I won't. But because my time is precious too, and I'm like, I don't want to waste my time with this. But usually, I will give something a full season, especially if it's like an 8 to 10 episode season. Like most shows are now here. I'll give a show a whole first season, and if it's kind of hooked me, I'll give it part of a second season, right? Because it might get really good. Most shows don't even find their voice until the second or third season. So I'll do that. But sometimes, if it's really a turnoff in the first season, I won't do it. Like, okay, everybody loves How I Met Your Mother. No, I couldn't do it. I'm sorry. That show sucks. I've tried so many times to watch that, and I just can't. I can't. But then I'm not really a sitcom-y kind of person. I anymore. When I was younger, I would do Seinfeld and Friends and stuff like that. But I cannot get into sitcoms.
That one was so bland and not funny and not good acting, and it just kept going. It just kept going and going and going. I was like, how does it keep getting renewed? It's not that
People
good.
love it,
It's
man.
just. It was for me, it's totally forgettable. And I'm like, all right, that's kind of mildly funny. I'm not a comedy writer. I'm not a comedic person, but I was like, this is not entertaining me at any level. I'm just kind of like annoyed by it. So I catch it every little bits of it every once in a while. But yeah, I never really watched that show that much. It's boring.
Yeah. And I do understand, I try not to trash things too much, because it is my opinion, right? And it's your opinion, and that's it. It's just an opinion. It doesn't mean that the show is actually bad or good or whatever. I love Attack on Titan. Some people might think it's awful. Some people might just really be turned off because it's anime or whatever, or it has some sort of a heightened drama or something to it. There's always things to pick apart, and there's always things that we can like. And like How I Met Your Mother obviously resonates with a lot of people throughout the world because that show did get renewed so much. And when I was taking screenwriting in college, I took a genre class, and we were going through and talking about different shows and the writing. And I don't remember what we went on. We were talking about some show. We had to analyze an episode of it, and I was just going off on this. And my teacher kind of schooled me a little bit on it and was like, well, you're wrong. You're obviously wrong because of the fact that the show had like 6 seasons, and so obviously it did do, it was good. And I'm like, well, that's not necessarily the case. I mean, there's a lot of shows out there that I think isn't good, but it has seasons because people eat it up like popcorn. But people don't always like things because they're good or bad, and good and bad is fucking subjective. Our opinions are subjective. So my taste, I can't just, really say something is good or bad because it is completely subjective, and no critic can. And so it drives me nuts when critics are out there telling people like, oh, this is just absolutely horrible, or this is good. I mean, half the things I love on IMDb get rotten reviews, or, and have people just going off on it. Like, this is woke bullshit or whatever. I'm sitting there going, well, you don't like it because it goes against your political views, or you don't like it because you feel guilty watching it, because it makes you feel bad about yourself or whatever. So I don't know. It's all subjective.
Well, and that's the thing. That's another thing. They don't keep shows on the air if they're not getting ratings. If the ratings tank, they usually take them off the air.
Yeah, but does that mean that they're bad?
Especially. Yeah, exactly. Does that mean it's bad? Does it mean it's good? It doesn't matter. It's making money because people are watching it, and the advertising. People are paying for the advertising time,
right?
So they can sell their stuff during these shows that are seemingly popular because they're getting a lot of ratings. Like that one show, it was on for years, and I forget which show was making fun of it. It's like South Park or something. And like, what? Yeah, what about that show Jag? It's about the Judge Advocate General, and it was on for like a decade or something. I was like, who's watching that thing? It is so boring. I was like, I appreciate the military and then having that show, but it just went on for years and years and years. Like,
it was like a courtroom drama that went on forever.
Yeah. And I was like, and I don't like soap opera either, but it was on the level of that. Yes, it was really sappy and bad dialogue and bad stories. But it stayed on the air, so people got ratings.
Look at those soap operas. I mean, soap operas are notoriously bad, right? Notoriously over the top acting. They call it, in the actor circles, we call it sniff your fart acting, right? Because you're like, you're turning away from somebody who's talking to you, and you're just really sniffing your own fart. And that's what sniff your fart acting. So it's shitty acting. It's shitty writing. Usually they have to turn that shit around so fast too, that like actors don't even have time to memorize their lines. So there's flubs that make it on air. The old show Dark Shadows was a soap opera that was on forever and ever and ever. And there are times that you could see somebody walking in the background that was like not supposed to be in frame, like a crewman, and they had to leave it in because they didn't have time to edit that shit. Or you can see a mic, or somebody will actually hit a mic or bump into somebody and they just have to keep going, or they flub a line or forget their line completely and somebody has to save them, but they can't cut because there's no time to edit it. They got to get it out. They're shooting and as much as it's just said sniff your fart acting, bad acting, it doesn't mean that they're bad actors on the show. It means that they're having to be over the top. It's melodrama. That's the style. But also kudos to those guys because they're having to memorize shit an hour before they go on. They're getting sides. Yeah. And they're like, hey, your pages just came in and they've changed. And they're like, okay, and they're having to just figure it out and do it. That's hard as hell. And nobody understands that that's what they go through. But there's reasons that soap operas are notoriously bad. But you were talking really quickly. You were talking about shows that, you know, go off the air. Fox used to get made fun of all the time for canceling really popular shows, right? They're like, oh, it's on Fox, it'll make it a year if they're lucky, you know, because Fox just used to cancel shit all the time. And before it could even find an audience, they'd cancel something after one season or a season and a half. This is back when we had like 26 episode seasons, though, you know, and they would just do that. It was notorious that they would do that. So it was crazy when something like Simpsons could make it as long of a run as it has, because it's like, wow, that's amazing that Fox actually kept something on the air. Well, you know, the show, I'm a big Buffy and Angel fan, right? A huge Buffy and Angel fan. Well, Angel, when it got canceled, it was in season 5. It was the height of its viewing. They had more viewers that season than any other season, right? It was super successful, but the powers that be at the station wanted to get a fresher vampire show on the air or whatever. So they started actually doing forgive the pun, revamping of Dark Shadows. They were going to bring Dark Shadows back, and this would have been the 3rd incarnation of Dark Shadows, because there was a 90s incarnation with Ben Cross that I used to love, right? And it was over the top and silly too. But they were going to bring Dark Shadows back, and they shot a very expensive pilot. They canceled Angel. Everybody at Angel found out that they were canceled, even though, I mean, that season was epic, right? They found out they were going to be canceled. They were still midway through their season. And then they shot this pilot, which was apparently so expensive that the pilot never got fully finished, never aired, and they canceled it before it even got that far. But they'd already canceled Angel, and everybody had already gotten other jobs, and they, you know, it had already, so they couldn't go back to Angel. And I think Joss and everybody there at Angel was just kind of like, fuck you, you know, you canceled us. Yeah. And they wrapped that show up, I think, perfectly. It ended on a cliffhanger, but it ended better than Buffy, which knew it was going to end before they even started the season, in my opinion. I think Angel ended perfectly, but there were like people going around trying to get Angel back on the air. They're like, please, somebody save this show, because it was so good, right? And so they didn't have a vampire show, and it was their own damn fault. So they quickly rushed around and put this show Moonlight in process, which was it's a poor man's Angel. It was a guy who's a vampire in Los Angeles as a private detective trying to atone for the sins of his past, and meeting up with a blonde female cop who there's this like will they or won't they kind of relationship bullshit, and he's like a private investigator by night trying to, you know, make amends. And it was shitty, and it wasn't good, and it was the exact basic premise of the first season of Angel, and they just rushed that into development, and it made it like 2 seasons, and then they ended that. But it's just that kind of crap. It drives me nuts, because there's great shows out there like the OA, a great show with a cult following all over the world trying to save it, and Netflix cancels it, you know?
Yeah. And another one along those same lines, a friend of mine is a complete diehard fan. The same situation as Firefly.
Oh, yeah.
Fillion show.
That was a show that everybody loved, right?
And then lots of fan outrage. You know, they're trying to get it back, and then there's some talk about trying to do it again, and not going to get all the original actors back, or some of them are coming back, so forth. But that was another one. I know a lot of fans trying to get that back on the air.
Yeah. Well, and they did the movie to make up for it. Yeah.
Yeah, and they tried to. Yeah, but people love that series, and probably shouldn't have been canceled. But
absolutely shouldn't have been canceled. That was better. That show was just finding its tone. It had, you know, and it was a good show. If you're into sci-fi, I mean, sci-fi to me, I like sci-fi, but really, it's not even. I mean, it was sci-fi, but it was also like a Western in space. You know,
Chinese Western. Yeah,
right. Yeah, it was really cool. But yeah, I don't get it. It's not. Okay, there's another show, Counterpart. Have you ever seen Counterpart? It was on Starz. No. Counterpart had I'm trying to think of the actor's name. He was the teacher in the movie that we talked about on the last episode, about the drummer.
Whiplash.
Whiplash. Yeah. What is his name? He played J. Jonah Jameson. I can't think of his name right offhand.
Oh, J.K. Simmons.
J.K. Simmons. I love J.K. Simmons. A theater actor too. You know, great actor. J.K. Simmons is the lead in this, and it's about parallel universes. It's about a parallel universe, and a guy, you know, in Germany, and it has this stellar British cast. He's the only American, I think, in it. Oh, it's got James Cromwell in it too later. But it's so amazing and mind-bending, and it's like espionage and like kind of actiony and spy, and like, oh, it was such a cool concept, and it was just getting off the ground, and they had 2 amazing seasons with these killer actors, and it actually had a lot of interest, but the network felt like it was too male. Like it didn't have enough female perspective, even though the main character it was J.K. Simmons and his wife, and there were actually 2 strong, amazing women characters in the show, but they didn't feel like it was female enough. They had a female enough perspective, and they were really trying to get that bent with their shows on Stars, so they just canceled it. And everybody was waiting on the 3rd season. It kind of ended, and we were all like, is it going to be, I can't wait till the 3rd season. And then it's like, psych, it's gone. And other places were trying to get it. They're like, will they save it? I think people are still talking about, like, can this show be saved? Because it only ended a couple of years ago. Yeah, like right before COVID. And it's like, can this show be saved? Can it? Because it is so interesting and so good. And it got canceled for a stupid reason. And it's not just ratings. They cancel things for all sorts of reasons that don't have anything to do with ratings all the time. But yeah, it's like, well, or the potential of ratings, Yeah. I mean, we've talked about this before. It's like there's the art side of things and there's the money side of things. And inevitably, money always wins because it is a business first and foremost. It's a show business. The show aspect is why we all get into it, but the business aspect is what wins in the end.
Well, and these days, okay, you want to cancel a show, take it off of Netflix, take it off the air. You got 50 shows to choose from to replace it. It's like there's no shortage of stuff to replace stuff that if not working for whatever reason, financial, creativity differences, things like that. You got plenty of stuff. People are making more stuff than ever these days. So if it does get canceled, you got plenty of stuff that'll take its place. So I think people, executives, whoever's making these decisions, really don't care that much. All they say, what's going to make us the most money? What's going to get us the most ratings? This one isn't. We got 20 right here to choose from. One of them is bound to work, So I think there's a lot of that going on, more so than ever. So.
Yeah. Well, listeners, what we've been talking a lot about the shows that we like and the reasons that they get canceled, and it's time now for us to kind of wrap up the show. But if you would like to reach out to us, we'd love to hear from you. Hit us up on our social media. It's in the show notes or by email. Let us know, what you're watching, what you think about some of the things that we talked about today. What's your stance on digital versus practical effects? How do you feel about those Star Wars movies? And the first 3. Are you a original trilogy fan over the new ones, or are you one of those people that absolutely defends George Lucas and his take on going back and redoing things? We can get into lots of fights about this stuff, and I love that. Brian and I both love to get into fights about it. We have strong opinions about Star Wars and Marvel and movies in general and TV. Being in the industry ourselves, and also just lovers of those things. We love TV. We love movies. We want to hear from you. So hit us up on social media. Join the conversation. Thank you so much for listening to us. And Brian, as always, man, it is such a pleasure to see you and to talk to you again. And I look forward to talking to you next time. See you later, buddy.
Oh, man, so great talking to you too. Loved every part of this episode. And I'll talk to you next time.
All right. See you later, man.
Peace. See ya.